Welcome back to the Bluechip Breakdown, Vols fans. I am your host, Bull. And in today's video, we're going to be updating you on everything that has happened over the weekend with our Tennessee Volunteers. Talk about, some of the updates with the transfer portal, with some new guys that have been added to the 2024 class. We're also going to talk about what Ole Miss is doing in this transfer portal and, what that's going to mean for the 2024 season, specifically the playoffs pertaining to what Tennessee is going to have to do to ensure that we can get into the playoffs. All right, so with all that being said, let's start off on that defensive line with a new commit in Jamal Wallace. All right, so he came in on campus for a visit, and they always get your measurables there. He was 6'3" and 300 pounds. This is a guy that plays for Sierra College. Okay, so he is a JUCO guy that's transferring in, and he plays outside linebacker, kind of an edge rusher for Sierra College, and he looks pretty good playing there. He also played safety and wide receiver earlier on in high school. He said he gained like 100 pounds during COVID, so that's pretty interesting. But he is a really good athlete. He's twitchy, okay? He's twitchy, especially if you move him at tackle. And I think that that's what we're going to try to do. Coach Garner loves these versatile defensive linemen, okay? It's like a project that I think that he kind of takes some pride in. So expect for him to help out on this football team some this season, but I think especially moving forward, okay? This is a position that Tennessee kind of, I wouldn't say overlooked, but we kind of missed on. In the past couple of seasons, we just have not picked up that many defensive tackles, but this is a really big pickup because Jamal will have another 2 years to play with us, and he can kind of grow into the system and add some depth for the following years at defensive tackle, where we know that we've got some good guys coming back for 2024, but they are going to be leaving us. So there's going to be a huge void there, and I love what the staff is doing targeting that position. Now, the next guy that plays on that defensive line at defensive tackle is Murad Watson. He was on a visit. It sounds like he really likes Tennessee too. All right, so that's the guy that's from Jersey. He's another 6'3", 300 pounder. Okay, so we've definitely got a type whenever it comes to those tackles, and I love his film. Right, so we talked about this several times. He is another very, very twitchy guy. He's going to look good in run support, but also rushing that passer. I think he's got a very high ceiling right there. It's still between us and Syracuse. Syracuse is making a whole lot of noise in this transfer portal. All right, they've added Cal McCord, who is the Buckeyes' previous quarterback, and they're just making those splashes right before signing day. I think that they will probably add a couple of more, maybe today, maybe tomorrow, but for sure on signing day, there will be some surprises with Syracuse. Can we win out in that battle? I'm hoping that we can, because again, we need that depth at defensive tackle. Now, moving on to the tight end position. All right, we all know that we added Holden Stays. Okay, that was a huge pickup for this team, and we will be having a film breakdown on him coming for members of this channel. And if you would like to become a member and help to support this channel, okay, you can for as little as $2.99, and you will get exclusive content, like some of these videos that we're talking about on film breakdown, and some things with our team, with our scheme, individual players, all of that. We can really break it down to the T for you guys over there as members. You will also get access to custom Bluechip Breakdown emojis, okay? You will get badges, you will get gifts, all of that good stuff, again, for as little as $2.99. So with the tight ends, we talked about Cole Harrison being a guy that P and I love this film. He looks like a phenomenal pass catcher. He runs great routes. He has good hands. He's from California. Sounds like he really, really liked the visit with Tennessee, okay? Kind of said that, his parents are going to play a big role in his decision, which, rightfully so, but they are going to actually be traveling with him, following him wherever he decides to commit to. So with him coming from California and our biggest competition being Washington State, you have to ask yourself, is this going to be a situation where the family wants to stay out west? Do they want to kind of stay in that general area, kind of stay up there in Washington? Or do they want a change of scenery and probably a change of pace, moving down to Knoxville? He said that he, is going to think about it on his flight back home, and he's going to sit down with his family. I think that we'll probably hear something about him at some point today. If not today, obviously, we've got 2 more days until he has to make a decision. But very, very hopeful. 6'5", 220 pounds. He's going to have to gain some weight. So kind of a project for Coach Abe and for this staff. But again, I think that his upside moving forward is going to be huge. Another guy that Tennessee is in on is Kentucky commit Willie Rodriguez. He's 6'4", 240 pounds. That's the main thing that I like about him, that he's going to come in with a college-ready body. I think that that is a big, big priority for this staff because we do need that, kind of like ready depth at tight end just in case anything happens. But with him, I'm not 100% sure if he did come up on his visit this weekend. He was supposed to. I know that Kentucky has some staff members go and do an in-home visit with Willie right before our visit. And, I haven't heard anything about how his visit went, anything like that. So I'm not sure if he did come up and visit. But that's one to keep a close eye out on. Hopefully we can close on him. I think that if we could, we'd probably take both of these tight ends just because we're so short on depth. But it's going to be very interesting to see how that whole thing plays out if Willie decides to stay with Kentucky. I hope that this staff has some sort of a backup plan with another tight end. I have heard that they might move Shandavian Bradley over to tight end. He looked pretty good playing there in high school, so maybe he can come in and give us some instant depth. I think that he's kind of close to being, I guess physically ready to play tight end. Obviously, he has to learn the system and the scheme, but he should be pretty close to about 240 pounds by now. That's what he was shooting for, to be able to start as a defensive end, or maybe not start, but just be able to get into the rotation there. So all those things, very, very interesting to see how everything plays out with that tight end position. Again, we're going to keep a very, very close eye on it. And as soon as we get some updates, we will come back to the channel with that information. All right, so the next position that we're going to talk about is that secondary. All right, so we all know about Kobe Thomas coming in, and, he's probably going to be able to fill in at that safety position. That's what I think, but he could also play the star position. So with that being said, I'm curious on, is this staff still targeting Trey Jones? Haven't heard a whole lot about that. That's the safety from Central Michigan, 6'2", 215 pounds. P and I kind of like him a little bit more at star. I think that if you can get, Kobe to play at the safety position, and then you can bring in a guy like Trey Jones, let him play star, I think that we've got a big time upgrade in our secondary just across the board, okay? Now, obviously, we still have Jordan Thomas who can play there, Christian Charles, Christian Harrison, maybe even Jordan Matthews if they feel like they have to move in there. We've got plenty of options. We've talked about Boo Carter potentially being able to step in early as a true freshman and play at that star position as well. But it sounds like a lot of teams are targeting Trey Jones right here in this home stretch. He took a visit to Georgia last week, and I'm just not sure if he took, a visit to Tennessee over the weekend. I was hoping that he did, but again, I just haven't heard any news about that. So curious to see if Tennessee is still pursuing him. I hope that we are, and if we are, I hope that we are in his top, top 2 to 3. But, again, we're going to be finding out here in the next couple of hours. I think he could potentially be a guy that takes it past the start of the signing day, which is, on the 20th, and he could kind of take it up to, I think they've got up until like January the 14th, 15th, or 16th, something like that. So we'll see how everything plays out with Mr. Trey Jones. Now, we did host Devin Marshall, who is the cornerback from Villanova. He's 6 feet, 200 pounds. That's the guy that I wasn't too high on him. I didn't really love his film, but, again, the coaching staff likes him. So I think that they are kind of targeting him more just in case some other guys kind of fall through, and we'll get to that here in just a second. But Devin Marshall, really liked his visit, and he was also scheduled to be visiting NC State this weekend. That visit, for whatever reason, got canceled. I don't know if that was on NC State's behalf. I kind of feel like maybe it was because, again, it's just not a lot that you love from watching his film. Now, I haven't watched a whole lot of it, but from what I did see, there's just not a whole lot to love, just honestly speaking. So he has stated that he would like to visit NC State maybe in January. So you just have to kind of wonder, how much time does he think he has to be able to commit to some of these schools? I know that the spots are limited, but it does sound like he may be kind of leaning more towards trying to slow walk throughout this entire process. So right now it is between us, NC State, and West Virginia for his services. Not quite sure what's going to happen there. Again, I think that he may be kind of taking his time a little bit too much. I think that Tennessee really wants to try to get in Jermod McCoy, who is the cornerback from Oregon State that everybody wants. Everyone's covering him very, very heavily. He came off of a visit from Texas A&M, and it sounds like he's kind of torn. That's what Austin Price says. It sounds like he's torn, but he does, it does seem like his family liked Tennessee a little bit better than Texas A&M. So that would be huge news, man. If we could pull him off, again, Trey Jones, we've already got Kobe Thomas. We're going to have a very, very solid secondary, a whole lot of depth. Going to have to watch out and see what happens in the springtime. If we can get all 3 of these guys, is someone going to leave? I would anticipate that somebody, at least 1 or 2 bodies are probably going to try to hit that spring transfer portal. The only problem with that is they can't transfer to an SEC team. but I think that they can still transfer to any of the other, Power 4 conferences. So we'll see how everything plays out right there. But again, keeping a very, very close eye out on all of that news. All right, so the last position group that we're going to talk about is the wide receivers. And Tennessee picked up a preferred walk-on in Braylon Harmon. He's a 5'9", 180-pound wide receiver from Knoxville Catholic. So he's a hometown kid. He grew up loving Tennessee. And, I really like his film. I think there is a lot to love about his skill set. He's got a very special skill set where he can make people miss inside of a phone booth. I think he's going to get a strong look, on special teams along with Boo Carter. And I think we've got two very, very dynamic playmakers back there. And hopefully this young man can earn, a scholarship with some, excellent play for Tennessee moving forward. And last but certainly not least, got some good news for y'all right here. Chris Brazzell, that is the wide receiver from Tulane. We talked about him coming off of the visit with Washington. We said that it was really between us and Washington, at this point in the game. It sounds like, from some of Washington's insiders that he is no longer considering Washington. They called it a mutual parting of ways. All right, so sounds like he kind of scratched Washington off of the list. Now, there's 38 teams that have offered Chris so far. There's a lot of SEC schools, Ole Miss, Georgia, Auburn. There's a whole lot of people that are involved with him at this point, but it does sound like Tennessee should be in the lead. Don't know when he's going to announce where he's going. I'm hoping that it's today, but he could maybe wait until Wednesday to make a decision. Don't know if he has any more visits lined up, but again, it sounds like he's leaning towards Tennessee. That's going to be so huge, for this football team. And I cannot wait for him to pick Tennessee so that I can break down his film. And, again, that's going to be 4 members only. All right, so let's take a look at what Ole Miss is doing in this transfer portal. There's a lot of people talking about it, right? They've actually got the #1 class in this portal right now, okay? So they've got 9 commits, and of those commits, they have 4 4-stars and 3 5-stars, and y'all can see what the rest of the top 10 looks like. I want to throw NC State in there as well, and that's something that we are going to talk about a little bit later on. Like once we get more of the rosters figured out, we're going to talk about what NC State looks like some leading into next season. All right, so back to Ole Miss. If you take a look at what their roster looks like, right? If you take a look at all those 9 commits, we know that there's several volunteers on this list. I don't know how much of this is just Lane Kiffin kind of being a troll, but obviously he does believe that these guys can play. There's a lot of players right here. They have committed to play defense. They are expecting to upgrade there. And they are also the front runners to land Walter Nolan. I think that they are going to be able to pick him up. You see right here that they've got Juice Wells too. We know how dynamic of a playmaker he is. Okay, we've talked about him a ton. He was a guy that I really wanted Tennessee to pick up, but for the locker room issues, I would much rather have Chris Brazzell than Antoine Juice Wells. But we all know that Lane Kiffin doesn't too much care about that type of stuff. I do think that their roster is going to improve significantly this season, and I also think that their schedule is going to be a lot easier than next season. Let's pull that up. All right, so you can see out the gate, man, they've got 4 what looks like should be wins. Okay, Kentucky should be a win. South Carolina should also be a win. The 3 games that look, I would say, probably concerning for Ole Miss on this schedule would be LSU, Oklahoma, and Georgia. But they've got 2 of those games at home, okay? So Oklahoma and Georgia will be at home. I think that they could potentially end up winning one of those 2. Now, they have to go down to Death Valley and play up against LSU. That's probably going to be a night game at that point in the season because Ole Miss is going to be undefeated. I'm not quite sure what LSU has going on, but I do believe that they're going to have a very good football team. So you're looking at them having 1, maybe 2 losses, okay? I actually really like their odds versus Oklahoma and Georgia, especially at home. I really do, especially with the pieces that they've added in. So what we're talking about is Ole Miss could potentially be working itself into that category of upper echelon SEC teams that only loses 1 game. Right now, I have that as Alabama, Texas, Georgia, and, again, I would have to throw Ole Miss into that category. LSU could be one of those fringe teams as well, but I think that there's a second tier, and that second tier is going to be more than likely LSU is in that tier along with Oklahoma. I think that we are in that category as well, and maybe Missouri. Okay, I kind of feel like Missouri might take a step back next season and, take itself down to that 3rd tier, which is, what I call maybe like the 4 to 5 loss tier. That second tier being the 2 to 3 loss tier, and then the top tier is being the 0 to 1 loss tier. What that means, for this football team going forward, if we want to make it into the playoffs, that game versus Oklahoma early on in the season is going to be a big one, with us, kind of being two of the fringe second tier teams. For us to try to work ourselves up into that top tier, that game is going to play a big part in what's going to happen for the rest of the season. So that game is going to be critical. I think that the staff, and everyone involved in the university is going to look at it that way too, right? I think that as you're kind of like looking at this arms race, teams are gearing up for this 12-team playoff. Ole Miss is definitely a team that I think a lot of people are taking notice of what they're doing right now in that transfer portal. So, Tennessee just has to finish strong. I really do love our odds, y'all. Like, I love our odds. If we finish strong, again, we already got Kobe Thomas in. If we can get, Mr. McCoy from Oregon State, and if we can somehow get maybe Trey Jones, and, obviously Mr. Watson, if we can get those 3-4 guys, I feel very good about our chances to be able to work ourselves up into that top tier too. But those are my thoughts on the situation. Please let me know yours down in the comments section. That's going to be it for this video. Please make sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Please also consider becoming a member of this channel and hitting that join button down below. And as always, we will talk to y'all on the next one. Thanks. Peace.